Okay, welcome everybody to our 2020 virtual field day of the interseeded plots here in Turin, New York. We're in a cornfield that's had interseeding for a few years. We've interseeded annual ryegrass, and we've overlaid several different herbicide treatments, residual pre-emergence herbicides, to see how those products interact with interseeding and see if they're compatible or not. So early on in the season, about a month after applying the pre-emergence products, we came back and rated the weed control. The primary weed in this field is common lamb's quarters. We also have a few other red root pigweed, smooth pigweed, and some velvet leaf. There weren't really enough of those this year to get good ratings for each species, so all the others aside from lamb's quarters were lumped into other broadleaf weeds. And then we came in and sprayed a post-emergence for most of these treatments, post-emergence with Roundup early July. For one of the treatments we did use Status. Was that Status and Resolve Q? We did use Status and Resolve Q, and then for another treatment we did use Cultivation as our mid-season final weed control immediately before interseeding. And then in late September, right before harvest, we came in and checked out how the interseeded annual ryegrass looked, and we actually collected biomass and weighed it all out and compared our standard, which is just the Roundup only, no residual, to all of these other treatments that had residual products, and see was there injury to the annual ryegrass from those herbicides.
All right, so why do people do cover crops? The first thing that any conservationist would tell you is to prevent erosion, to hold the soil in place with those root systems, to intercept the rainfall, the foliage, and to prevent runoff of our topsoil, which is the most valuable soil that we have, filled with nutrients and filled with biology. Other growers might say weed prevention, because this cover crop will compete with any weed seeds that are trying to germinate this time of year and effectively neutralize them and outcompete them. But a lot of people in this area have large dairy farms and are required with their CNMP to put a cover crop on if they want to put manure on in the fall. So that's another great reason to include a cover crop that's going to actually take up some excess nutrients and lock them in place for next year's crop. In addition, there are some cover crops that do control diseases. Some of the mustard families help control verticillium. And then one of the things that you might find very useful if you have a farm that has sandier soils is if you have a lot of biomass in your cover crop, that's actually going to turn into organic matter, and that organic matter is going to serve your crops by holding more moisture and being able to hold more nutrients during the cropping season. That organic matter is also food for the microbiology in the soil, and that microbiology is very, very much a part of releasing nutrients for uptake by our growing crop plants. So yeah, cover crops can be put on essentially 2 times during the season. One would be with a specialized piece of equipment, an interseeder, that is used in planting the cover crop seed in season into a growing crop. There's a couple of soil and water conservation districts that have these planters or have access to these planters. There's a couple of coalitions of growers within New York State who have banded together and purchased that specialized piece of equipment to do some interseeding. and otherwise it would be after the crop is harvested, and using either broadcast methods, rolling the fields after broadcasting the seed, and or using a no-till planter to seed the crop in.
Yeah, so as Jeff mentioned, interseeding is really a way to get that cover crop in the ground ahead of time. So you're not trying to squeeze it in November or December, and it's only going to put on a little bit of growth before winter sets in. And it's primarily for silage corn, so that as soon as harvest comes around, you take it off, and that cover crop just explodes, and you've got great soil health benefits with stabilizing the soil, limiting erosion, having living roots in the ground, all the benefits with that. And to add on to what Jeff said, if you're in the western New York area, do check out the Genesee River Coalition of Conservation Districts, which I believe got together and purchased an interseeder. And I think a few of the farmers in the Western New York Soil Health Alliance have interseeders as well. So you should try to contact them.
So this year was an exceptionally dry season, and for some folks more so than others as far as regions of New York State. And for those individuals who did not harvest as much hay or hay crop silage as they usually do, and they don't have enough inventory to get them completely through the year, they are entertaining the idea and actually doing some cover crops like winter triticale, with the intent of planting it right after they take their corn silage off, allowing the plant to grow over winter, and then mid-May to the third week in May next year, harvesting that as a high-quality forage.
All right, so we're in the corn herbicide interseeder trial that we have here at Conway Farm in Turin. What we have, we're standing in the plots. We're going to go through the individual treatments now of what we did. So we had corn planted on June 1st. Our pre-herbicide treatments were made on June 2nd. Our post treatments were made on July 1st. And the interseeding was done with the annual ryegrass on July 6th. So our post treatments made on July 1st, what that was is the treatments are made with different, we had 3 different treatments for our post treatments that we used. The main treatment was just Roundup Power Max alone. And then we also had a conventional treatment in there of the Resolve Q status mix. And then we had row cultivation as well as one of our post treatments. And the post again was put on just before the interseeding. And this is what would be a standard practice for anybody using interseeded cover crops into a standing cornfield. Is we put down a short residual or a reduced rate of a pre-herbicide. And then we come back in with a post again just before planting of the annual ryegrass. So right here we're standing in our the first treatment, and this is one that was did not receive any pre on this particular treatment that we're looking at. It received just the 22 ounces of Roundup Power Max on July 1st as our post. So this will be a total post treatment followed by interseeded annual ryegrass on July 6th. Okay, so this is our untreated check we have here. The untreated check with no weed control measure taken at any time of the season. You can see the remnants of what happens to a field when we have no cultivation and or herbicide treatment made. Just a plethora of weeds that came in. This was interseeded though through this weedy mat, and the annual ryegrass is pretty much non-existent in the weedy check that we have here. Okay, so yeah, so we're this treatment that I'm standing in right now. This is our treatment of 2 pints of atrazine that was used. 2 pints of atrazine. We had 40%. Our pre-control of the lamb's quarter was 40% control. We had 61% control of the other broadleafs. In 2019, in this same field, same treatments that we had, the 2-pint rate of atrazine actually did a lot better with 88% control of our lamb's quarter here. We do have trizine-resistant lamb's quarter in northern New York, but with 88% control last year, we can kind of rule out that we had a trizine-resistant population possibly in this field. The other thing too that was interesting with this was the biomass reduction with the atrazine. In both 2019 and 2020, the biomass reduction of the annual ryegrass was very low. We had 8% reduction in 2019 and only 2% reduction in 2020 with the atrazine. You know, some of the things that may have contributed to that, where we had less losses of the annual ryegrass, or less than we would have expected with an atrazine treatment as our pre, is basically in 2019 we had ample rainfall. We had 2.58 inches of rain within 9 days after the treatment in 2019. This year we had only 0.89 inches of rain within the first 9 days after our pre-treatment. We do have a little bit finer textured soils that we're dealing with here. Also, we also have very high organic matter that we have in this. So maybe that was some of the things that could have buffered some of that and minimized the injury that we did not see with the 2-pint rate of atrazine on the annual ryegrass. All right. So the treatment that I'm standing in right now is a pre-treatment of 5.4 ounces of Callisto. 5.4 ounces of Callisto this year. We achieved 50% control of our lamb's quarter pre-emergence, and that was not expected. We expected a little bit better control of the common lamb's quarter with Callisto. Last year in 2019 in this field, we achieved excellent control with 99% control of the common lamb's quarter. This year, 50% control in 2020. Different set of growing conditions, and I think the things that we look back at 2020 growing season, you know, we did have, you know, a little bit lower rainfall amounts during the summer. Temperatures were a little different, and the corn struggled a little bit too. We didn't get the early canopy on that, so I think that could contribute to some of our weeds, weed suppression that didn't happen this year, is that the corn was a little bit shorter throughout the season. You know, July was extremely hot and dry. Corn just didn't shade the ground, so we did have some breakthroughs of some of our pre's, not just this particular treatment, but other treatments that we've seen here. So this is Callisto, followed by our 22-ounce rate of Power Max, Roundup Power Max, just before the interseeding.
All right.
So this is our treatment, pre-treatment of Resolve Q at 1.5 ounces pre. Resolve Q is a premix of Resolve DF and Harmony, and we've got 71% control in 2020 achieved with the common lamb's quarter. Again, not as high a control as we had achieved in 2019. 2019 we had 99% control in this same with this same treatment and rate. 71% control. We would expect good to excellent control with Resolve Q pre-emergence on common lamb's quarter. The other thing too that we've added to this is our post treatment. Again, would be our Roundup Power Max at 22 ounces just prior to the interseeding the annual ryegrass. And looking at the biomass reduction, we didn't have any biomass reduction with the pre-treatment of the Resolve Q on the annual ryegrass. Okay, so this treatment we're standing in here looks like we almost missed putting in the interseeded annual ryegrass in this one, because there's almost no annual ryegrass that remains at this time of year. This was our Dual 2 Magnum at 1.67 pints per acre, applied pre-emergence, followed by 22 ounces of Roundup Power Max just before planting the annual ryegrass. So Dual 2 Magnum is our Group 15 herbicide. It's primarily known for its strength in annual grass control in corn and soybeans, and so you can see that Dual 2 Magnum did an extremely good job at controlling annual ryegrass like we would expect it to do. And we had 72% reduction in the annual ryegrass biomass as when compared to our standard treatment in the trial this year, and that would be similar to last year. Last year in 2019 there was a 79% reduction with the Dual 2 Magnum reduction of the biomass of the annual ryegrass. So the treatment I'm standing in now is 2 pints of Harness. Harness is a Group 15 herbicide similar to the Dual 2 Magnum that we just looked at. And with Harness, it's kind of interesting. It's one that, if we want to try to compare a little bit of differences between Harness, which is acetochlor, and the metolachlor, is that both of them are very good at controlling annual grasses. The acetochlor would be a little bit stronger on some of our broadleaf weed control. And you can see that Harness, we did get 71% control of the common lamb's quarter in here, as opposed to only 32% control with the Dual 2 Magnum. But we wouldn't typically use either the Dual 2 Magnum or Harness into a corn or a soybean herbicide program, with the intention that we're going to use them for broadleaf weed control. They're going to be used for our annual grass and our nut sedge control. So we look at Harness here, and Harness actually, we would expect with the acetochlor a little bit less injurious effect on the biomass of the annual ryegrass, but you can see that there's not much annual ryegrass remaining in front of me here today. We had 74% reduction of our annual ryegrass with this acetochlor treatment that we used, and it was a little bit surprising because in contrast to 2019, in 2019 the acetochlor treatment that we used that would be similar to our Harness treatment this year, we only had 19% reduction in the reduction of the annual ryegrass biomass. Last year, the comparison, looking back at the Dual 2 Magnum treatment, we had 72% reduction in biomass in 2020 and 79%. So the Dual 2 Magnum was very consistent at controlling the, if we want to consider it a control, controlling or injuring the annual ryegrass, which we would expect it to do. So we had that. Again, this was a little bit more of a wild card for us. Again, different growing season. May have been a rainfall issue. Not exactly sure. Why we had such high take out of the annual ryegrass, and we didn't last year. So we're standing the treatment that we're in right now. This is 3 ounces of Sharpen. Sharpen is a Group 14 herbicide. We use a lot of Sharpen in burn down programs and in a pre-program. It does have a rate dependent. It's going to have a residual that it'll bring to the table for us. We're using 3 ounce rate, which would be the high rate of Sharpen used as a pre. The Sharpen did very well at controlling the common lamb's quarter last year. We had 100% control. Well, correct that, 99% control last year in 2019. 2020 we had 74% control of the common lamb's quarter in this trial with 3 ounce Sharpen rate. The 3 ounces of Sharpen that we used here as the pre-treatment was followed by our conventional treatment, post-treatment, and that included a 1.25 ounce rate of Resolve Q, tank mixed rather, with 3 ounce rate of Status. Status is a Group 4 herbicide, similar to our dicambas and our 2,4-Ds in that same herbicide group. And so you can see that we did have a little bit of reduction this year in the annual ryegrass biomass, only 17%, versus the 2019 trial that we had in this same field. We did have 49% reduction in the annual grass biomass with this same treatment of Sharpen at 3 ounces pre, followed by a post-treatment of Resolve Q and Status. All right, so the treatment that I'm standing in front of right now is, we're standing behind rather, and in front of me is the treatment of Acuron. We used Acuron as a pre-treatment with a use rate of 1 1/4 quarts. Acuron is a premix of 4 products. It is Callisto, which is a Group 27, bicyclopyrone, which is another Group 27 herbicide, atrazine, which is a Group 5, and Dual 2 Magnum, which is a Group 15. So it's a premix of 4. You can see that we did include Callisto in this trial. We have atrazine in this trial alone, and we also have Dual 2 Magnum in this trial alone. So we have these ingredients split out in individual treatments, and now we've combined them into a 1.25 quart rate using Acuron as the pre. The Acuron rate at 1.25 would be a very reduced rate. Standard rate that we use in more systems. By itself, we would up that rate to about 3 quarts of Acuron. So with a reduced rate, we still had pretty decent control this year at 69% in this particular treatment that we're in with the Acuron at that reduced rate. Last year we had very good control. We had 100% control with that same reduced rate of Acuron on the common lamb's quarter. We also took 22 ounces of Roundup Power Max, and that was our post treatment in this one, just prior to the interseeding of the annual ryegrass. And then also for our the injury to the annual ryegrass that we had is we still had pretty high incidence of biomass reduction with the annual ryegrass. We had 63% reduction of the annual ryegrass with the 1.25 quart rate of Acuron used here. So we've got the major component that's taking the annual ryegrass down in that premix would be the Dual 2 Magnum. So the reduced rate of our Dual 2 Magnum again brought us down to 63% biomass reduction, where the Dual 2 Magnum at the higher rate alone at the 1.67 pints, we had 72% reduction of the annual ryegrass. So the treatment that's in front of me right now, this is similar to the previous treatment that we just discussed. It's the Acuron at 1.25 quarts, and in place of the 22 ounces of Roundup Power Max, inter-row cultivation was done prior to planting prior to the interseeding of the annual ryegrass on July 6th. So you can see that again, we did have 73% reduction in the annual ryegrass biomass, which was a lot higher than we had in this particular treatment last year. Last year in 2019, we only had 28% reduction in the annual ryegrass biomass reduction with the Acuron at 1.25 quarts and the, combined with the row cultivation. So again, fairly high reduction in annual ryegrass with an Acuron treatment, and again, probably we're gonna say a lot of that was brought down by the by the active ingredient in that product of the Dual 2 Magnum.